It's all zeros and ones. How hard can it be?
Exactly. I don't know.
Sometimes we lose the ones, though.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Well, we're not.
Yeah, I'm gonna post the YouTube link because why not?
Should I text Nakush?
Oh, should we make him
No, I'm just asking.
Panelist?
Should I text him or not? Yeah.
I mean, the first half is going to be from our buddies Owl, and then it's going to be I'm going to talk about something, or we'll just have a group thing. Doesn't matter.
The good part is at the beginning, is what you say.
This is the fun part. The rest of it is just people showing advanced technology, which whatever. It's just technology. Anybody could do that. So I did get Kafka connected to NiFi, which is interesting. But it's pretty boring.
Connect to Minify to NiFi. That's what you want to be doing.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to connect Minify, NiFi, Kafka, FLaNK, Kafka Connect, Kafka Streams, and find a reason why anyone should ever do that.
I think you're gonna have a harder time with the last piece of it.
There's some extra pieces in there, yeah.
Finding the use case later, but I can't do it.
I need something that generates use cases from an app I write.
Yeah,
that's what I need. Justify why I built this mess.
My last community article was how to connect.
And then build the article
from Kubernetes to Teradata via PyODBC. And as I was writing this, I was like, why am I doing this? And then I remember, a customer asked me for it. But, this is...
That's always the best reason.
But I still disagree with their approach, but that's a different story.
Well, I guess you sending out a beacon, I sent out a beacon. Now all of a sudden we have 8, so we're growing.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, it's also on YouTube for the people who don't want to have to be involved with us.
Can you
send me just watch? Yeah, I'll post it in here. I guess that's kind of meta. I can put it on Slack it too, I guess.
Like our LinkedIn.
Well, invite them to this chat, not the LinkedIn one. This is this one.
Okay, so I'm copying whatever you wrote.
Yeah, that's fine.
Starting soon. Oh, anyways.
So you want to just open it up and have people introduce themselves, where they're from, what they're hoping to get out of today, like we did before?
Yeah, why not? I think I have everyone talking permitted.
Yeah.
Looks like it.
You guys want to introduce yourself, where you're from, what city? We actually, last meetup, we did the joint meetup between Philly and Jersey and New York City, and we actually had someone from Portland drop in, which is cool.
Hi, my name's Bibi, and I'm here from Jersey near Princeton. There's South Brunswick municipality. I work in the city, but of course, everybody's working from home right now, so it's kind of a moot point where you really work.
Cool. What do you do for work, Bibi?
I'm a tech lead, mostly trade capture engines with a financial firm.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Cool.
Well, I'm new to the meetup today, but I'm Brian from Washington D.C. from OwlDQ. I work very closely with Milind, so it seems like everybody knows the Milind and all his good stories that he's got. But we work very closely, pre-sales, post-sales, client implementation, all the nitty gritty.
Yeah, Melinda's pretty well known around our parts, man.
Yeah, that's how it seems. His reputation precedes him for sure.
Oh, he's got quite a rep, man. It's a good one too. So
As opposed to hours, I suppose.
Yeah. I can tell you the story. The first time I met Paul was actually at a meetup, and I don't remember that night.
I remember that I was glad I had an account executive with me because I didn't pay the bill. That's a good
point. That's a good point. At that point, I was actually I was not working yet for Cloudera, so it was a very interesting night. And I think I when I woke up the next morning, I had no idea how I got home.
It's not a good thing.
Hence,
the only time that it happened, which is why it's so exceptional that we have to call it out, I think.
Yes. The only time it's ever happened where Paul and I get together and have a tendency to drink a little too much.
Yes. Never. That's right.
So
Anyone
I'm
else?
Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Just north of Princeton. Did a lot of work in DevOps. I was a DevOps coach in the dojo, and right now I'm working on AI, ML, and machine learning pipelines. So I'm interested to see how you guys are using FLaNK and other things.
Cool. Anyone else?
Should we introduce ourselves as well?
Hi, this is Anjaya. I'm in Delaware. I'm working with one banking company, working as a software engineering, like a big data in like a Spark streaming and Kafka.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, so my name is Paul. I am from Philly, as you can tell by the accent. No, I do live in Philly though. I'm French originally. I work at Cloudera, and I mean, I think that we all been working with data somewhere, one way or the other, with some domain of expertise. Recently, my domain of expertise has been mostly around the infrastructure as a service deployment, kind of across multiple form factors, especially in cloud-based stuff. Yeah, I'm excited to join the Princeton meeting. Like John said, like we work on the Philly meetup together, but it's always good to see all these faces. And hopefully next time we will be able to do this face-to-face at some point. I'm looking forward to the day where we can have a joint meetup that is not over Zoom.
John Kuchmek.
On the beach.
Yeah. Hey, we did a meetup on the beach once. Remember? Well, it wasn't really a meetup, but it was a fancy event, and that was fun.
You and me spoke on the beach, yeah, with liquor.
We did. And so John Kuchmek, I'm right outside of Philly, the Jersey side. So I get to straddle between both Princeton and Philly. As you can see, though, my heart lies with all Philly sports. So I will be Philly sports till I die. Before working at Cloudera, I actually was a lead data engineer and did a little small stint as a data scientist at American Water. So I built a lot of stuff. I have extensive knowledge of utilities and things, and was a manufacturing engineer as well for a while. I've done a lot of weird things, so we have good stories though.
Cool.
Tim,
I got to introduce myself.
You might as well. Some people might not know you.
Oh, that's true. Well, welcome. I'm me. I do some NiFi, some other stuff with the meetup. The next one is going to be very interesting because we're doing some edge stuff. And the one after that, I've got a new NVIDIA box that supports 16 concurrent cameras. So I might try to see if I can run at least 3 concurrent deep learning algorithms at 60 frames a second each. And so far, it worked in a demo. So on one little edge device, I don't know any application for that, but maybe we'll think of something by the time we roll that out. Because we got another meetup on the 18th, that's next week. But we got some cool content today with Owl, and I got some new FLaNK stuff. FLaNK just got released by Cloudera with our SQL, and there's a connector for Hive and Kudu in there. So you got Kudu, Hive, and Kafka. We'll show you a little FLaNK stuff. We'll show you some other fun stuff after we show you how to make your data not suck. Having data quality is actually pretty smart. That should always be after anything I touch. There should be some kind of quality in fixing it up. But that's me. Hope everyone enjoys this. We're streaming to YouTube, so just remember that one. In case you see something bad, John.
Since you guys are kicking off, you might as well be the one to end it, and then you can start if you want.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, myself is Milind Pandit. I'm with OwlDQ, and in a minute we will get into all the details of what we do. Before OwlDQ, I was working with Cloudera. Team and myself started this meetup. We started with 2 people. Now we grow this family to 1,500, so which is really feel proud. And it's always good to be around this techies. It's every meetup. It's not about like we are coming and pitching something, but we always learn a lot of things from everyone. So it's like a give and take with the community. So, and that always we encourage, and team John, Paul, doing great things with the future of data meetups. We will be also part of it going forward. If you guys want to present, come up with the new topics, I think you guys are welcome. Come up with the new ideas. So today we want to hear a lot of the new use cases, what you guys are thinking about, what is data quality means to you. And with the collaboration with the Cloudera Tech, we can certainly get into the solution and how that solution architecture looks like. So really excited to be part of the meetup. And as Paul said, can't wait till we see each other face to face.
Great. So is that a good cue, Milind? Should I go ahead and start sharing my screen and we can kick off?
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
So let me go ahead and log in. And I trust everybody can see my screen.
Yep. You can.
Cool. Yeah, so I'll give you the quick kind of 30-second background because that'll kind of anchor the conversation and what we actually do. But the idea is, you know, our founding team had come from places like Cloudera, dealing with streaming, with different file storage systems, you know, you name it. And really, they kept hearing a common theme amongst clients, whether that's from data science backgrounds, whether that's data engineers. And that theme was, right, I don't think it's any surprise, the whole garbage in, garbage out, but really just companies and team members in general were spending more time than they would like with data quality. So, you know, they had this vision. Really, if you boil it down, it's one part kind of auto ML, one part, you know, BI tool and visualization layer, and one part kind of rule engine. But the core premise is, can we deploy data quality easily, consistently? And can we remove a lot of those things that consume a lot of the time that we spend either creating those boundaries, limits, thresholds, you know, constraints, or can we remove a lot of the time creating the visuals, the reporting, and the workflows, or can we remove a lot of the time around kind of auto-generating a lot of these things? So it's really the culmination of, you know, a number of pain points, all related to their experience, right? Numbers of years living with this problem, putting it into a software, right? From their eyes, they had tried, you know, a lot of the big industry players. They had tried homegrown solutions, and really it's all of those things that either didn't exist or didn't exist without a lot of pain to make them. So let me kind of walk through, you know, from high level bird's eye view. we'll kind of look at what it takes to get set up, right? And what that might look like from a streaming perspective, or from, I think we'll just do a standard, JDBC connection in this case, but take you kind of end to end, what it looks like to set up, and then some of the alert screens, the visuals, the dashboards, and how you might interpret this. And then, yeah, we'll just kind of open it up and hear what everybody kind of thinks, or if there's any questions. So I'll jump start by going into what we call our Explorer. But this is really your getting started page. So you might have pre-established connections, right? The same way you establish connections, could be S3, could be HDFS, could be a streaming Kafka topic, right? But we want to provide a consistent experience, a consistent set of tools for everything beyond the initial connection, right? So much of what we do, you'll see, can be applied to your streaming data sources in a very kind of uniform, standardized way. So, File Tree Explorer, we'd pick, I don't know, I'll pick something that looks interesting. I'll pick this data set, and this will kind of prompt a series of steps. If you want to assign it different names, if you want to include or exclude certain columns. One of the key things that I'll touch on in a bit here is the concept of a time filter or a time slice. Kind of everything we do is structured to be over time, to give you that z-axis or historical element as we conduct all these different, pre-bundled, pre-configured data quality scans. So as we look at, I'll just kind of skip through these, but the idea being, if you want to deploy kind of common algorithms, common detection techniques, you're not necessarily having to go open a notebook or, leverage people on your team to give you, certain skill sets. You can configure these things with a few clicks, whether that's your kind of single customer view, or you want to see if there's duplicate transactions, whether that's more complex associative analysis, right? You want to do basket analysis. And I'll kind of skip through to the end, but we'll give you an estimation. So if you are going to deploy this, it's a bigger workload. We'll be able to give you size and job resource requirements. And if you wanted to submit this to a job control framework, you could input this directly into, Control M, AutoSys, crontab, doesn't really matter. Airflow for that matter. But the idea being, right, if I want to get started, I don't know what I don't know. I want to create what we call an OWL check. But really, if you think of an OWL check, you might think of it in terms of questions can I ask the data? How can I interrogate it consistently over time to pull out things that are not normal, whether those are outliers, data drift, schema evolution, and then how can I interrogate the data kind of up, down, left, right, sideways, horizontally, and then again back through time to kind of take the onus out of a lot of the heavy lifting that's usually required in getting set up, getting started, and actually doing data quality. So I'll just kind of jump into some of the things that are just by default, right? They're kind of table stakes, but we're doing them behind the scenes. And one is, right, all of your data profiling metrics. So a lot of tools have this. It's really table stakes for OWL, but one thing that's pretty interesting that we do is, again, we slice everything into time. So whatever your natural kind of time increment might be, if it's monthly invoices, if it's a daily batch job, if it's an hourly file that you receive, we mirror that ingestion pattern and scan in those same time increments with the data relative to that time. So one reason I always highlight that is in doing profiling in a vacuum, while that's good in some ways, it also can lead to kind of blending the bad data with the good data. So you don't necessarily get an overall picture of maybe when and why certain things would be introduced. And for us, we do it kind of to establish what we call a baseline profile. So if you were to take 13 or so metrics per data attribute every scan and start to build predictive models from those, right? You can imagine if your row count was between 1 million and 1.5 million every day for 30 days. Well, if you were to write a rule with that historical context, you might, suppose that your rule should be between 1 million and 1.5 million, because that's what the projected normalcy would be, right? So we kind of take that concept with all these different metrics, correlation, segmentation, your standard descriptive statistics, all your data profiling metrics, even down to your load times. And we create these models to project what's normal, what's the expected variance, what are all these things. And in doing that, I'll kind of jump back to this screen. We can click this AR, which you might think of as adaptive or automatic rules. But in doing that, you can see I've created over 10 pages worth of data quality checks, right? These are constraints around, is it null, is it complete, is it valid? All of those things that otherwise you're typically defining manually. And we want to give you those kind of guardrails around your data, right? So if you deploy a model,
isn't this simple data profiling versus data quality? This is Prashant. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. I guess I would consider data profiling a part of data quality. When we
No, it is. My question is the difference between defining a rule versus what is shown here is a lot more different, right? So for example, if I have to do a compare, or if my attribute should have fixed values, right? I need to define a rule. So this particular tool is showing me something that's a automated data profiling versus how do I define the rules? The point I'm making is the rules have to be defined to measure the business business knowledge in it, whereas what you are showing is just a simple data profiling. Am I saying it, or am I wrong here?
Well, I think semantics kind of aside, however you want to define it. I would consider if a column was never null and was suddenly null, those types of things. If your row count dropped from historical norms, I don't know. That would, to me, would be part of the. I don't know if that's validity.
Agreed. No, I agree with that. So the reason I'm saying this, right? The demo that is being presented, I really like it, by the way. What I'm coming at is the business problems are much more complex than what you're showing. And what I'm really interested, and I do not know about others because some of the people are from finance industry, I just heard, which is the case with me too. My question is, if you can dive into that directly, that would be really useful. Because these things that you're showing at the moment is very straightforward data checks, which can be easily extracted. So I would be really interested in going into how do you define the rules, business rules, and how easy it is to define those and find the patterns. And also I would like to understand if there is without the rules, is it possible to figure out the patterns, the fourth column that you have there? I would be interested in that. Does that make sense? I mean, or am I jumping too quickly for everybody else?
No, that makes sense. Yeah, no, our stance is, and this is kind of the feedback we've received is we spend a lot of time defining structural or technical data quality rules. So that's usually encompassed within this column. And from there, it's mostly valid values, right? To your point, in clauses, referential lookups, hierarchical parent-child relationships.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the next kind of 30%. So if we go, 50 to 60% with technical data quality rules, another 20 to 30% in the valid value, right? It has to be in all these things. And then what we say is machine learning first, rules second, meaning we can remove a lot of those just laborious, cumbersome, necessary evil type of rules that you just have to have in place, right? Your MIC code can't be null. Your rights and warrants can't be empty, right? Your Australian dollar settling currency can never settle in Indian rupees, right? Whatever those things might be. If you leave those until the end, you're only doing maybe 10% of the manual effort that you were previously. So to your point, there's kind of two things I'll touch on quickly. We have a fully distributed rules engine. So if you want to express, anything in ANSI SQL compliant syntax, we like rules for those reasons. When they're, it's a more efficient way to solve a problem, why not do that, right? So under the hood, we have a completely distributed rules engine that's available. To your other point, we have different algorithms that will do different things, right? So whether or not you're looking for kind of typos or this is more of a formatting algorithm to say, hey, your social security number adheres to a very succinct majority class, and you've got these social security numbers or you have these phone numbers. So all of these kind of map to a different underlying technique that we'll use. And I think the one to your point that might be interesting to drill into is, can we learn patterns, quote unquote, some people call them associations, but can we learn patterns across columns? So whereas outliers, you might be looking down columns, whereas outliers, you might be looking at spikes in numeric values. This one's a little different in that it's cross-column anomalies, meaning these things have always appeared side by side next to each other. And specifically, right, if you were to give the basket analysis approach, you might say, from a shopping cart, shampoo, conditioner, and soap are typically bundled together. We oftentimes see those in a shopping cart together. If you were to see shampoo, conditioner, and ketchup, that may be an anomaly. So what we have here is kind of a twist on that, where we're looking for those anti-patterns, those things that are anomaly cross-column associations. So when this gets interesting is exactly to your point. It's not when you have one column, two columns, you're doing a referential lookup, you're saying, if it's in this country, it can't do this. If it's here, it can't be null. When it gets really interesting is when you start to go many columns, let's say 7 columns wide, there's any number of one-to-many relationships that are valid, but they're very difficult to probabilistically express in an if-then kind of cascading series of logic. And what makes it more interesting is we provide a kind of a micro segmentation. So if you said, you know what, there's actually different patterns that I want to learn by. In this case, we did unique Bloomberg ID. But if you said, I want to learn by CDAL, or I want to learn by a MIC ID, or I want to learn by an industry, or I want to learn by an asset class type. So total return swaps may have a totally different cross-column set of relationships than that of an equity or a mutual fund or a fixed income instrument, right? So that's where it gets interesting when we can learn these things and not just learn them at columnar levels, not learn them with broad sweeping analysis, but get into, hey, this isn't normal, and this isn't normal based on the context of this specific instrument and its history.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting case. I really like this. So this is done as part of the streaming. It's by running simple queries, or I mean, you're running these as a stream and live data. How is this achieved?
Yeah, so this one, I'll kind of peek under the hood. This would be a slice of time from a JDBC connection. I think Milind may have something around streaming to present, but the same premise, the same functionality is available by comparing time slices of streams.
That's
Got
correct.
it.
Yep.
Got it. This is interesting.
Yeah, so it's basically calling out, typically when these columns are grouped together, the pricing source is can be, or whatever this designation is. And today we're actually seeing it with UK RB. I don't know what that necessarily means, but probabilistically, statistically, right, however you want to measure it, it's very infrequent, and by our estimation, it's an anomaly.
Yeah, yeah. And what you're showing here is not just that particular pricing source, but also the entire record is an anomaly, not just that attribute.
That's right.
I think, right, yeah. I think that's the power I was really looking for, because finding a attribute in the data quality issue within the attribute is very simplistic. I mean, it's very easy if you ask me. Like what we have today, even in our company or our firm, I should say, is the very simplistic approach to that, because we define the business rules and we figure out where the anomalies are, and we spit out the data and present it in something like ClickView or Tableau. But this one, I think finding the anomaly as per the pattern, right? And I think that is interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, it kind of ranges from keeping your guardrails on, right? Making sure you have a sanity check around your data loading, and that you don't have metadata changing behind the scenes, and with everything being a varchar or a string these days, right? I mean, things kind of bleed in places where they shouldn't, but it ranges from those simple keep your sanity checks to more advanced kind of detection techniques, whether that's things with fuzzy matching, whether that's the pattern associations or typos. So we try and have a little bit of
one more question on this, on the patterns. So let's say I find a new pattern and it's an anomaly detected. Now, if I say, no, this is a new pattern, and I want to accept that as I want to accept that. How does this model accept it? And from next time onwards, it will not be reported as a issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not offline learning, but it's closer to a stateless model, in that we recompute a large chunk of the model with each run. So this is where a lot of machine learning, in our point of view, kind of it's difficult to maintain, because you're always going back to a notebook or a scratchpad. So within our tool, we try to have a few different workflows to kind of thumbs up or thumbs down, right? Give it feedback, right? So you have your passive approach, and your passive approach is effectively saying, this is good. Incorporate this for future predictions, incorporate this. You're assuming green is good until proven guilty, but you're assuming it's good. But if you've said, I want to take an active approach, I've assessed this, I could say, you know what? My team validated this on our meetup. It was good. We can leave a note, right, if you wanted to, for audit trail purposes. Oftentimes for either regulators or compliance, you'd want that. Yeah. And then you can downtrain it. So if I wanted to exclude this and incorporate this as a negative label in our feature vectors, you just hit the down arrow. It'll prompt you to retrain. and should go from 80 to 81, and we'll no longer be seeing these. So these will not be brought to your attention. This was deemed valid.
Fantastic. Cool.
So I could go on and on. I'd love to keep it, interactive with the group. Was there anything, Milind, that I missed? And from the wider audience, any areas, you'd want to go a click deeper?
Yeah. Brian, can you quickly touch base on our source validation feature, and then probably we can talk about some of the reports, because this is adopted at like a larger enterprises, so it's an enterprise ready product. So we can touch base upon some of those features. And then I do have the streaming demo working as well, so quickly can run through that as well.
Okay. Yeah, so our source validation, it's a reconciliation function, but it allows you to kind of point, click, and map data set location A and data set location B, and do a full row check, column check, conformity check, and then down to the cell level, do a cell-by-cell comparison to say, was there precision loss? Was there white space introduced? Was there rounding errors? All of those things that can happen, whether they're implicit errors or soft errors that may go unnoticed, right? All of those things where you can't just do a magic MD5 sum and say, oh, I have a perfect match. That's our source reconciliation. And then, yeah, we have different kind of reporting options. If you want to get organized by line of business or by schema, by data source, if you want to cross-cut the things that we're finding on particular days, you can cross-cut by time and by type. And then really our reporting is pretty flexible, but one of the things that we've seen that people really like is everything we do is extendable, in that our web app is driven by our APIs, and you can plug directly into our metadata repository, so our meta store, if you wanted to kind of build your own, right? A lot of people say, oh, I love that I can just access all of these things and pull these reports, even though we have, kind of the bird's eye view reports at your fingertips. People always want to see, things very specific to their business, and we allow them to have that flexibility.
Right, there is a question related to the rules engine. So
yeah, how do I see? Let me pull up my chat. Got it.
Yeah, I can read it for you. So
okay, I see it. We can add additional data quality rules. That's correct. Yep. There's the concept of kind of adaptive rules, automatic rules, however you want to think of them. I don't care what you call them. But those live in one place, and then your static rules, which might be those business layer conditions that you want to check. Those can be supplied as well. Those are separated within our rules panel. So yeah, and I think there was a follow-on to that one, so I'll just do this quickly. But one of the things that people have expressed is, right, writing rules can become kind of cumbersome. So we try to twist that a little on its head. And, say you wanted to check for certain values, right? You can see our little preview. You can see if it's null or filled in. And you see this and you say, you know what, this one should never be null. Okay, this one should never be, this should always be a double. This should coerce into a double. The same with this one. All right, so we try and give you the concept of quick rules, where we have a full repository of rules that can be used over and over. And if you wanted to get more expressive, right, you could say ACE greater than 0, right? You start to get actual conditions. So we'll just call this 0. And if you really wanted to get, full bore, you can type anything in, with the IntelliSense, it'll kind of guide you. But you can add anything you can dream up, really. Windowing, partitioning. I think, yeah, all the functions get exposed from Spark. It's an underlying Spark engine. So kind of anything you want to express is available. And before
if you don't mind, can you go back to the rules, if you don't mind, please?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to see the quick rules, list of quick rules available.
Yeah, so they'll be housed in our repo, but that's your reusable templates. These are out of the box, but if you wanted to make one, let's say you store, postal codes a different way, or you have different regexes. I mean, it's pretty straightforward to kind of set up and create a reusable rule. So even when you do want to apply that, male, gender, MF in clause, you can define it once and deploy it across 50 different data sets with a click. So yeah, I definitely see those valid values a lot. That's a big one. We completely believe in you should define it consistently, define it once, and then everywhere it lives, it should be adhering to the same or a similar rule.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. So I'll kick it back. I don't know if I talked too long or didn't talk enough or didn't go deep enough, but just let me know if there's any other questions. All right, put everyone to sleep. I see everybody took off their live camera.
So no, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Definitely wasn't asleep, but cool. I do have a tendency to multitask, so I apologize. This is really neat. I didn't realize that you guys went that far into it with the rules engine. So I mean, I find it pretty cool, actually.
If I can take like 2 minutes, can quickly show the streaming use case as well. And as you know, like we are talking in Teams meetup, so we can't really stop talking about NiFi. So I have
so nice. You get more than 2 minutes now, Milind.
3 minutes now.
So means OwlDQ is a product suite, right? So we do have, our focus is mainly how we can make the data quality simple. But as doing that, we do have like a profiling, cataloging, job scheduling, workflow. Means whatever the functionality Brian just showed, everything we do, everything we expose as a REST API. So once you install the product, we have a Swagger REST API, and you can pretty much access all the data pointers. You can even run your data quality checks using REST API endpoints. And that is important when a particular enterprise, when they are running like a data pipeline, they're using outside schedulers, Control M, a couple of customers are using Airflow. So we can easily integrate OwlDQ with their framework. So that's one point. Second is I do have NiFi flow. For example, this flow is like when you are ingesting the data, pretty much once the data is landed, you want to quickly run the owl check. So I'm just executing all the REST API calls on the owl datasets. And then what happens is it returns me. So you can do it like a synchronous way or asynchronous way. Like say, if you're working on a large data set, it may take longer. So you can have an asynchronous way to get the results from that owl check. And in this particular flow, what I'm doing is looking at the data quality score. If the data quality score is less than 75, I'm just logging a ticket into ServiceNow, or you can integrate directly with the Jira. So all that functionality is available with Owl. For example, if I run it quickly, you can see, I can go to the data provenance, and team is going to go in detail of the NiFi, but it's pretty much, you can see, I run the owl check on byte data 2, and it returns me all the details. It's basically all the JSON object you get as part of the outcome. And if I go here in my environment and see the jobs I ran, if you see the public byte data job is ran. And if I can click here, I can go and get the details. This is the job I recently submitted. So that job is running. So this is an easy way to integrate with any top level orchestration rule, where we can call the REST API in OWL, and you can run the OWL check. Also, you can get the score out of it. The second thing I want to talk about is the streaming. So for example, this is a particular use case for network traffic anomalies. For example, let's say you have a set of network data. Network traffic goes from workplace A to workplace B. And let's say in certain cases, let's say you find a pattern where the source is common, but your destinations, instead of going to destination B, you find that, okay, oh, this particular network traffic is going to destination C. So similarly, as Brian talks about the outliers, we can use the outliers and patterns and identify, oh, there is a packet size difference, or there is a source to destination pattern mismatch. In that case, you can identify those anomalies. So in this particular case, I'm pumping the data through NiFi on a Kafka topic. And we have a Kafka connector, which is running locally here. And if I go here in my local, I'm just running fast, but just want to get the concept out there. If you have any questions, please stop me and ask. And this is InfoSec data. So this is the streaming running right now. If you see, I'm running the job for every minute, and it is looking into 10-minute time interval. So instead of 10 minutes, you can go as long as you want to look into the back. Like you can go 10 minutes, half an hour, an hour, right? And as you see, the data quality score is drifting as we are moving forward. And if you drill into like one of the particular run, you can click on that and it will take you to that particular run. And you can look into, okay, for example, it's looked into the behavioral data. Oh, for my destination IP, typically I see like a 12 destinations, but in this case, there is a 13 destinations. So your network admin can go and check it out, why it is happening. Or for example, packet size is within the certain range, but in case it is really going out of the bound. So today it is like a 52,000 or something more. So you can easily find out those details. And for that, you are just hooking up, selecting the right keys and the columns, and it learns based on how you're receiving the data. Based on that pattern, it learns itself and gives you all this output. So this is the streaming. You see this, the window is sliding every minute. So you can connect it to the Kafka topic. And we are talking about the FLaNK. In that FLaNK use case, we are thinking about like if you have multiple Kafka topics, you can merge those streams in FLaNK, and then you can feed that information to OwlDQ to run the DQ on top of that.
So at the moment you are showing the data quality as well as the range. I was looking for something like a coverage portion. So for example, my SAR output is going to let's say my data store or my data lake. Mm-hmm. Or further analysis, right? So my CPU memory and IO output is going to my data lake so that I can figure out what's happening. Suddenly, let's say I have like 100,000 machines across my firm, and out of that 10 or maybe 100 are giving some issue in terms of sending that data at a periodic event. So basically it's a coverage issue, right? So how do I figure that out from here?
This coverage issue, that's something I think it should be part of your data, right? Means as part of the metadata or somewhere we can see into. When you say it is out of the coverage, that means you are looking into like a certain network package or certain information, or the CPU was at constantly like between 50 to 60% and suddenly it dropped to 0.
No. What I'm saying is it was sending the data. Now it has stopped sending the data. These out of 100,000 machines,
yes.
Let's say 1,000 machines have stopped sending one data altogether. So it's like they drop the data. No data is coming. So it's an issue for me.
Right. And that we can easily figure it out once the data is not coming, either for the streaming or even for the file. So for the particular, let's say, data is getting loaded at a particular time, and if the data doesn't come in that particular time, we identify that and we send the alerts on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a very straightforward use case, and we often identify that. In some cases, customers have like these scheduled jobs, and sometimes they don't receive those feeds at a particular time, and that is one of the prominent use case to use them.
Okay. No, this is exactly what actually we are working on at the moment.
Okay.
And
yeah, and it's more than we would like to get your feedback as well. Means where do you see like, okay, oh, these are the certain things I can take advantage of, or it's good to have these. So we are always welcome to get that feedback.
So Milind and Brian, can I ask a question? Do you represent OwlDQ or what is it? I mean, the Cloudera, or you are? We
represent OwlDQ, and we are partnered with Cloudera. We certified on a CDP as well. So we work with like a lot of common customers who are using both the platforms.
Understand. Will we be able? Can we connect outside, if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I will leave my email IDs, myself and Brian's email ID in the chat, as well as we can connect on the LinkedIn as well.
Sounds great. Thank you.
And Milind, Carolyn has a question. I gave her the capability to talk, so just a heads up. Carolyn.
Hey, how's it going, Milind?
Hey, going good, Carolyn. How are you?
Good. I just wanted to ask you about removing duplicates. So one of the problems that we see with some of our cybersecurity data streams is that the same event gets sent more than once.
Right.
And it kind of causes havoc downstream. Do you have any solutions for removing those?
Means we only identify, monitor, and we send the alert, but we don't really take action on the data. So we really don't update any data set, but we can certainly identify the duplicates and alert you on those and give you the report. I think that's if I understood that correctly. You're talking about rectifying that, right? Doing an update. Yeah. Okay.
Also, do you have any other cybersecurity solutions that you or examples that you've worked on?
So this is there is a detailed blog on this particular use case, as well as so this is mainly use case we got it from customer and we work on that. But if you have any, certainly we can work with any data set. I will share the blog how we handle this in detail, which has like a more technical depths with that. And if you have any additional use cases, we'll more than happy to work with you on that.
Yeah, it sounds good. I mean, the data quality is a big issue in the cybersecurity realm, because what happens is you get a lot of the devices will get upgraded and, you know, nobody tells anybody. And so the parsers stop working or they send back funny results. So.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Any more questions? There is a lot to cover, but yeah, we can certainly see like if there is any follow-up required. For the reporting, as Brian mentioned, we also include Zeppelin notebook as well. So you can be as creative as you can be. So where we can give access to our Metastore and you can write your own reports on top of that. So John, team, if there are no further questions, probably we'll sign off here and we can like move to the next topic.
Sounds like a plan.
I'm trying to eat. Like I said, I multitask. But yeah.
That's pretty smart.
So I do love the fact that you can actually call the API in real-time stream and get the data quality back. I think that is incredibly useful.
Yep.
That's where a lot of the data governance tools, like where you can have this bidirectional integration, so that as a data stewards, you can look into the particular data set and you will have a how I can certify a certain data set or how I can trust this data set, where you can really attach the OWL score to that.
So I have a question. It's more a philosophical question than the tool-based question, right? So one of the things that we always found a problem with when I worked at a water company was getting the people who own the data really to be able to make the change to the data, right? So this tool, I mean, definitely awesome, teaches people to, you know, flags the data sets coming in, allows you to look at the quality of the data. But have you run into, you know, organizations where they've had similar problems where essentially, you know, you get the data, you understand what's wrong with it, but really are they going in and making the changes and seeing, I guess that part of it is something that I've always struggled with when I've worked in industry.
Yeah, and it's kind of a process, right? So day one, nobody really comes in and says, hey, I saw this shiny new thing. I'm going to rip out, you know, what I did last year, and I'm just going to replace it without kind of vetting it, right? So it kind of moves through that progression where as they get more comfortable seeing the results, we have a rule migration. So a lot of people just port their existing rules in and say, oh, I'm at least like for like, and it's telling me the same things. And then they start to get more comfortable and they graduate to that place where they say, this is kind of my, you know, my actionable dashboard. I'm actually going to do things. Now, I think it's to your point, kind of a larger, companies just have a lot of, they have a lot of stuff going on where making any updates to an authoritative source is usually a pretty onerous task, just with you know, regulatory compliance. And then, right, probably the biggest thing around that is, whose job is it at the end of the day? We found these things. I'm the data steward. You're the data rule writer. You're the IT admin. Probably the bigger challenge is kind of who's ultimately responsible. That's kind of where we usually net, but we try and stay out of it politically, and we certainly see kind of both sides of that, where people are, you know, agile. I hate the term, but they are kind of willing and quick to make those changes, and certainly those that drag their feet, and it's a process.
So I don't know if you guys do this, or, I mean, it sounds like you have all the pieces there to do it, but imagine, you know, a world where you stream the data quality, like you connect it in real time to the NiFi stuff, or at least attach it to your Hadoop system. It tells you what the data quality flags are. And essentially, would it be, I assume it's possible, but would you be able to then take any kind of data quality like flag and push it into the data set to update the record in real time and then push it into Hadoop, right? So now, like the way that I envision it is the source system data is harder to change typically because that's where you have to get the business and people involved. But in the application world, they might be able to take the Hadoop data and at least put a flag so that any kind of application that they build on top of that data, if they want to recognize that flag, they could basically remove that data set or at least let the end user know that there might be something wrong with the data that they're looking at. Therefore, you know, I'm just thinking like my real world use case, I got a guy going out to change a meter, right? And you know, the meter says it's 3/4, but it's really 1/2 inch. So he takes all the tooling out, pipes, all these things, gets to the place, goes to do the meter change and realizes he's got all the wrong stuff. And now he's got to get back in his van, go back to the business or whatever, grab the stuff he needs, come back out and change it, right? So he's wasted time, he's wasted money. So being able to take the data that you deem not quality, flag it, and then being able to interject it back into Hadoop or something like that. Have you guys worked on a model like that? Is it even possible?
So the quick answer to that, John, it's possible, but I feel that will be a little bit overkill to do it on the event base.
Okay.
We can provide you all the details, right? As part of the outcome of the quality check, you will have, whether this rule is breaking. So you will have all the different kind of flags. So it's somewhere in your data pipeline or your ETL job, you have to write that logic, right? Okay, based on if I'm getting these indicators, I have to update the data. If you can able to do that, you can certainly do that. But I feel that will be a little bit overkill. If you can just do like a micro batches, probably that will work fine.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, even batch or micro batch would work. I'm just saying a way to then write it back to the system as a bad flag. So, you know, essentially the source of truth to the application becomes maybe Hadoop, right? Maybe they're getting the data from all these different source systems and the application's built on top of the Hadoop layer, right? And then by having the flag in there, right, using this engine to shoot the flag over, whether it be every day or every few hours or something like that. Now, when the end user gets the data, they know that there's a possibility that there's something wrong with it, which might trigger them to, you know, think about something before they actually make an action.
Yep,
just an idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it was neat. Tim, you ready? Sorry, I asked a ton of questions.
That's horrible. I mean, that's why we're here. I threw my stuff at the end just to have something else to talk about, you know, because I hate to give people just 1 hour of awesome stuff. So I'll throw some junk in at the end to make it people appreciate the first talk. So I have a little stuff to show, but nothing. I'm not keeping people here another hour. You know, we'll keep it interactive. I don't have a really set agenda. I've been playing with a couple of new things out in the in what I'm calling the FLaNK world, and I've got a couple of demos that I'm going to have for some future meetups. Next week we have a pretty cool one. We're working with H2O, and they've put out a model runner for NiFi and MiNiFi. So we're going to do a very interesting edge AI application. And some other things that we have coming up. I've got an NVIDIA Jetson powered smart car that we're going to do some interactive edge programming with. Also have a retail shelf thing. I have a smart shelf that I've built with an e-ink display and using NiFi and MiNiFi. I'm updating that real time. I'm trying to figure out how to work in Kafka Connect and FLaNK. Kafka Connect is a little harder to work into anything, but FLaNK is pretty easy. But we have some new features that just came out that are pretty interesting. That's why I want to make sure that those start coming into the future meetup talks we have and some of our demos. The Cloudera Streaming Analytics 1.2 just came out. This is our official release that has the new FLaNK SQL and table API. What's cool about this is we've shown previews of this before. This is kind of the linchpin of the FLaNK stack to be able to run SQL against Kafka. But in here, as you can see, the code is pretty straightforward. But they've added additional catalogs. So this means that I can connect to existing catalogs that are out there. So I'm going to play with which one of these makes for more interesting demos, whether it's the Hive catalog, the Kudu catalog, or the schema registry. And that's already enabled in some new versions that we have out here that I have running in my environments. If we look at the catalog, we can see here, I can enable the Hive catalog and run that in the SQL clients. And we can decide if we want to use that one or the in-memory one, so that the tables that we use within SQL will be inside the Hive Metastore, which is makes it pretty interesting. What I'm running here, if you remember in previous talks, is the SQL client. This is the FLaNK SQL command line to be able to interact with SQL in FLaNK, which is, to me, is pretty cool, because what I'm doing is, what we showed you last time, is we have an insert going on into a third Kafka topic that joins together two other Kafka topics. So what I'm looking at for a demo is figuring out, right now, both of those are populated from NiFi, from edge devices. I'm thinking now that I have a significantly powered edge device here that could do some crazy real-time stuff. Do I want to use Minify for those real-time cameras and sensors, or do I want to push it right to Kafka, and then from Kafka have FLaNK catch it here? I could also potentially run FLaNK on the edge device, because the NVIDIA Xavier is extremely powerful machine. I've got 8 gig of RAM. I've got multi-core CPU and 384 core GPU on there. So I'm thinking I could probably run FLaNK right there, but makes more sense to run FLaNK in a cluster, especially with everything that we're providing here. So you get that, real-time connectivity to everything going on. So I might run a combination of Minify and Kafka there to shoot off data and see how much data I can, nail my cluster with and have that come into FLaNK real time. Again, the problem I was mentioning before, what's a good use case? I mean, a bunch of real-time camera feeds are pretty cool, but I'm seeing if I can maybe work that into my real-time shelf pricing application, which I'm figuring as people walk by the shelf, the number of people who pass, maybe I count the number of people. If they pass more than once, I dynamically change the price, and I could do that real time. I don't know how cool that is, but it's fun to work on. Something else that I've added, someone was mentioning that, it's nice I can push messages to Slack. Be nice if I can push them to Discord. So I added a quick bit of code so I can push my calls to Discord as well. So if you've got another place you want to push messages to, let me know. I want to add that to the system. It's really straightforward to be able to do that. Oh, I got a hand raised, and it actually showed up. It's pretty cool. Yes.
Hey, Tim, so I have a use case for you.
Oh, nice.
If you can do your machine learning thing and detect how many people who pass through your booth were wearing face masks.
Oh, yes. I've seen some example code out there. Yes, we could definitely do that, detect who's wearing a mask.
No, it has to be face mask, not a Spider-Man mask.
Yeah, and if we could even determine, is it what kind of mask? Is it an N95? Is it a KN95? Is it a surgical mask? I'd be curious if I could even detect what type of mask I know there's algorithms out there that can detect who you are, even though you're wearing a mask. I don't think we want to go that far, but just to be able to count how many people went by with a proper mask. Yeah, that's a pretty cool one. Again, that's not a great example when we're not at a live meetup or at a event. I guess I could point it out the window. I mean, I do get some foot traffic here. Unfortunately, I'm not in Manhattan, so I don't have like thousands of people walking by, but that's a pretty cool one. What would you want to do with that? Do you want to do anything real time with that if someone doesn't have a mask on?
Yeah, actually, that's a goal. And to be honest with you, if you're putting multiple camera feeds simultaneously, then you can even compare, let's say, out of 5 people that pass in 1 second, even though simultaneously 3 people or 4 people are walking, I want to make sure like 50% of people are wearing masks, that kind of thing.
And then we just send a notification somewhere or update a system.
Yep, that's it. Create a dashboard. Should be pretty simple.
Yeah, maybe for the office. I could see that. That kind of makes more sense for in an office. So, we have a policy you can return to work, but people have to wear their mask. And if we start seeing the numbers go down, you might want to start it off at I think a lot of these people are looking at 100%. If there's anyone within a certain distance, I think I can measure distance as well with the camera.
That'll be cool. And if you want to collect sample data, we'll be happy to put you in New York City right now.
I'm sure people would send me to New York. Yeah, I do have access to live traffic cameras from New York, so I could use that for some training. But yeah, I've got 3 Logitech cameras on my Xavier, so I can run that. What's cool is that'll push through a lot of data because we've got the, is true or false. I'm trying to think what other kind of, the one thing is I don't have a set of sensors on there. So I'm trying to think, do I have some other devices that are detecting, general weather? I don't know. I would like to get a temperature gun and have that connected, but those are pretty pricey right now for the remote ones. But that would be a cool one to go. Not wearing a mask and has a temperature, send off danger notices. That could be something you might want in your office. Hey, not only didn't wear a mask, they have a temperature. Okay, maybe this experiment of having people coming back to the office is not a good idea right now. Those sort of things. That is a cool one. Yeah, I'll solicit more use case examples. I mean, me and Milind have been planning for, I don't know, Milind, how long has it been? Like 2 years to try to get people to bring us a use case and some data. And then we would walk through the entire streaming, storage, query, reporting, build an app on it, infrastructure, using the modern data infrastructure. It just never happened. So if that one's pretty good. I mean, I could probably work through that one. There's a lot of, there's not a ton of data in there, but it is kind of useful. I mean, and it's something you could definitely put into practice, even if you don't have, say, a high-end edge device. You probably get by with a Raspberry Pi, with one camera can give you a field of view of an area of an office. And you could detect, okay, people aren't maintaining 6 feet. People aren't wearing masks. Because, people say, yeah, we're fully compliant. And, and the bosses are fine with that. But, the people who've got to work there, they want to be safe. So, being able to actually have that information and have it anonymous. So you just have, okay, these were the numbers at these times, and not, say, this particular person. Just we counted a number of people. And this was that. This is how many violations of the 6 foot. This is how long it lasted. That's not a bad use case. Pretty cool. Where were we? Yeah, so if you have more use cases and you don't want to speak about it, either post it in the meetup, email me, just do a reply on anything we're doing, and we could definitely work that up. Like I said, and if you have one in retail, I've been playing around with some retail stuff, trying to figure out how to combine, when should I change a price for something? Because I have the ability, I have a e-ink smart display for a shelf. So I'm trying to figure out, when do I change a price? I'm selling a Cloud Arrow water bottle. So I figured if it gets hot, the weather forecast is hot, raise the price. If Twitter says people are angry at people who raise the prices of cups, lower the price. I could have a BLE sensor on there to detect when your phone goes by and count the number of people who slowed down past the shelf. If a lot of people just walk on by and don't buy it, maybe that's a trigger to lower the price. I don't know. All these things are very, very achievable. Not very hard either. So we got that. I don't want to keep people here too late. I do want to point out I have a new article out on no more spaghetti flows. And there's a picture of spaghetti. The reason why is NiFi is very powerful. We see a ton of people using them. But after about a year or two, people will come back and say, hey, your NiFi has a problem. It's not running as fast as I think it should, or, the performance isn't there, or something's wrong. And then when I go see what they did, they have 1,000 flows on, a tiny server with no RAM. And, they haven't upgraded to the best practices. They're not using the supported processors. They're not using record processors. They're not using version control. They're not monitoring their system. They're storing data, maybe not using the best processors for that. So I put together a bunch of that, hopefully help people with that, and as part of the FLaNK stack with NiFi. Other than that, I think I'll give people back some of their time. I'm working on a couple of new demos, but they're not completely finalized. And we've all seen the FLaNK joining of a couple of Kafka streams real time. I think next up we'll join together Kafka and Hive tables at the same time and use them maybe for changes. So I could check if a value changed in Hive, then I can update it. If it doesn't, then we don't do an update. I'll have to figure that one out. Also want to see if maybe we could do something with Milind and see if we could do data quality connection with FLaNK. I think that makes for a cool demo. What do you think, Milind?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime ready.
Yeah, so he'll do that right in 5 minutes from now. You don't have enough time, man. We'll do that next time. But next week we have on the 18th. I've got H2O coming in. Get that edge device. We're going to show you pushing machine and executing machine learning models that you could train somewhere else and then run them, whether you want to run them in a NiFi processor, in a Minify processor, and easily update them. And the models are very light. H2O has a pretty lightweight model that'll run anywhere, so that's pretty cool. So we'll take a look at that next week. And also we've got our buddy Ian Brooks coming in virtually from DC. He's going to show a FLaNK Kafka thing he's been doing. And I know the next thing he's going to work on is putting in some interesting machine learning. So we're getting close to that intersection of real-time data, machine learning, smart data, cloud, all this in one thing. Other than that, the roundtable want to talk about anything before we give people back some time to watch some TV?
I don't think you said Kubernetes at all, so I just want to make sure we cover every
bring
tech
it
word
up
silent.
possible.
The K8 is silent in every word. Like FLaNK, the K is K8, the 8 is silent. Yeah, Kubernetes is everywhere. It's underneath my chair.
I want to look a little bit at Kinesis. I kind of want to do some comparison a little bit, like going a little bit deeper under the cover on this, and also like some of the GCP data flow. It would be interesting to kind of compare and that kind of, like, just out of curiosity, not you know, kind of what I'm interested in, like resource consumption from like if you take it like a simple I mean, not maybe a simple, but like a common, because there's no really, like, you know, what I was thinking about, maybe I'm an idiot, but is there a standard, the same way that we have like TCP/DS, right, or stuff like this for data warehousing, is there a standard set of tests to test a streaming?
Yes, it's very old though. Yahoo put one out.
Yeah.
It's somewhere in their GitHub. Yahoo had one that they tested Storm, and they tested a couple others. And I haven't seen anyone update that in a long time. It might be useful to start with that. It might make sense to start a brand new one. I mean, so much has changed since then.
Because you want to, because then it would be interesting. Like, it's not only the ability like to get a shit ton of messages. How efficient are you at, like, you know, running a model on the wire, that kind of stuff, right? That would be interesting. I think, well, it's a much bigger problem, right? But having some sort of a standard benchmark for streaming application, I feel like it's kind of lacking. And this is a way that we can, because we always say that Kinesis is going to cost you more, right, or something. But you know, we have a clear way to be able to say this in the data warehousing world, right? But like, think about it, like, where is the workload XM for Kafka, right?
That would be well. That's, my people call that cruise control, but yeah, it's not not to that level.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I don't know. I think it's interesting. Like, it's as an area.
I think they're slightly different problems though too, Paul, in the sense that, you know, when you're looking at compute intensive workloads and queries, which are a little bit easier to do benchmarking against, whereas if you're looking at streaming, it's really about latency, right? So efficiency and latency is one thing, right? How quick can you process those records? I think is one thing, right? If you're looking at from a processing side, right, and a streaming side, can you process 50,000 records faster? And if so, you know, can you look at each record and see, does each record take the same amount of time? So is it not only faster overall, but is it consistent? I think those are things that might be interesting, right? Because if you think about it, if you have an inconsistent flow, but network and IO are really, I mean, for streaming, network and IO are big things, right? With compute heavy workloads, if compute and storage are close to each other, you know, you don't run into the same issues. It'd be interesting to think about the problem though, and see if we can actually develop something from that.
Yeah,
there's so many things you can look at. So many.
John, to your point though, is it, if you start putting a huge amount of compute, like data quality checks and stuff like that, that problem becomes blurred in terms of latency? That's always be the case, right? So if you want to just give latency, you just can't put too much logic. But now if you have data quality checks and all those things, you keep on building on it. So how do you balance it? How do you know where to balance it?
Yeah, no, I get you. There's a bit of an engine. So it's really, it's doing an engine mix, right? Or how many workloads or types of workloads you could do, and what is the expected outcome on latency of the models in order to do it. So.
No, but this is the kind of stuff, like, think about it. Like, you're talking about H2O, right? H2O could come and say, you know, I have this model that I can run on the wire, right? Like, how much, you know, on a similar configuration, right? That is running a streaming engine, right? Whether it's you know, FLaNK, NiFi, Kafka, or whatever. Although I don't know that Kafka could actually do this, you probably will have to do like some crazy stupid thing on top of it. But looking at how, concurrency, looking at, the throughput and stuff like this, like really treating it, because think about like what we're moving towards is really a on the wire analytics. And in this world, to BB's point, like you can apply the same type of benchmark that you would apply on a traditional warehouse, right?
I think, Paul, I would want to understand how much to put on it as a pattern to begin with, right? Means I'm sorry, this is my first time. It's a very fun discussion, but then what is the direction? Generally, we would like to historically keep clean slate, right? If you're doing streaming, let's do streaming. Your business logic is on one side, etc. But how much do we want to put in to begin with, so that we get in a state what you are defining, that now I need to really worry about what is my throughput over and above the latency, where it becomes something similar to data warehouse kind of a problem set.
Yeah, no, of course. And yeah, to your point, you don't necessarily want to, I mean, I'm not advocating to running a workload that would be more suited for a data warehouse to on a streaming engine. That's not what I'm saying.
No. I understand where you're coming from, but I'm simply thinking out aloud here that how much do we want to put in so that we get into this problem to begin with? What is a best practice if we had to come up with and say, hey, we will end up doing all this, but this is a good pattern so that you do not hit this problem set to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah, that's the hard part, right? Deciding what would make sense versus what would not, right? I agree with you, right? But I think that we can probably define something that is, goes a little bit beyond I'm sending a sheet, that many messages and that many come out in that much amount of time, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. I think that there's some value of figuring out. I mean, like just.
So to your point, yeah, the data quality example we saw, at some point of time, they might want to know what is the compute power, etc. at any point of time, not just
people that exactly.
No, I hear you. I hear you there. It's not like I'm trying to understate it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, but it's, I don't know. I found this. I'm like you said, I'm thinking out loud, but I found like there may be an explored area, right? Anyway, for instance, when you look at KSQL, for instance, by our gut is to say this is probably a terrible implementation, right? Because we kind of look at what it's doing. It's probably very good at doing very specific small things, but it will break when you're trying to do a little bit more complicated things. But there is no there's no way for me to have a data-driven clearly defined set of tests that say, yeah, well, it breaks at that point, right? And it would be interesting to think about how we could do this.
Boundaries and limitations, essentially. Yeah. Like what's the breaking point?
Yeah.
So you just want us to break stuff?
Yeah, I mean that's what I do, right? Like this.
Drive it until the wheels fall off, and see what's that point where you push it where just everything starts blowing up.
The Seinfeld episode with the tank of gas. Remember that? Where he basically fills up the tank and he keeps driving it, and he wants to find out what's the point where it doesn't drive anymore.
Interesting.
Well, I think just a quick comment on that. I think that is going to be very relative, right? What type of processing you're doing, right? If you're talking about streaming, getting the data from point A to point B without any processing, then you can see what is my breaking point. Then you can say, okay, I want to add like these 3-4 steps, then see what is the breaking point. So based on, I think, the processing and what you want to do with it, that that benchmark is always going to be drifting and changing.
Yeah, of course. I don't know. This was more me asking a question. Like the point is, I'm thinking like I'm building this data quality application, right? And I want to do it in real time. Like, why would I choose an engine versus the other?
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer this question.
I think that a lot of times that will be driven by, okay, whether what value I'm getting at real time or what I will do with the batch, right? Means whether do I really have.
No. I'm not even talking like, let's assume that I was able to figure out that this needs to be in real time, right? Let's assume that I want to build a streaming application, data quality application. How do I know which streaming engine to choose?
Okay, I see.
Right? What's the data-driven way to find this information?
Usually, I mean, you start with latency. So what could your SLAs typically will drive a question like that, right? So if my SLA for the data coming in and my decision making on what that data is, that will be the first driver. Then the second driver is usually, what do I need to do to the data as I'm bringing it in order to reach that SLA? So if you take a look at, do I use Spark streaming, NiFi, FLaNK, so on and so forth? Well, latency, if I need sub-millisecond latency, if I need like ridiculous latency, like or lack of latency, I should say, well, FLaNK would win, right? If it doesn't matter, right? If I need it under a second, well, now all the engines are capable. So now I look at the next thing. What do I need to do to the data set? Do I need to do like a ridiculous transform of the data set where it's basically a small micro batch? Okay, well then probably Spark streaming is a better candidate for something.
Yeah, I mean, I know this from knowledge, right?
Right.
But not from data.
But you want us to actually, okay, all right.
I want prove it, right? Like we understand because we derive it from we're doing basic science, or we derive it from the architecture, and we know what it's meant to do, and so because we're expert in this, right? But and the same way that we say Impala is going to be good for for BI type queries, but whenever you want to do like big ETL, like you're going to use Hive because the queries won't die, sort of thing. This we can clearly put in like this is where it breaks, this is where it doesn't break, like I'm running TCPS, this is what's happening, right? I feel like, I mean, I don't know, like I don't know of anything, I haven't read of anything that told me like, hey, run your streaming engine through this and you'll give you a score about certain areas.